Welcome back to Caddy Corner, episode 83. I'm Austin.
And I'm Caleb.
And we're back.
Again.
I guess this is interesting, and I'm having this epidemic right now, is I missed wearing my headphones from whenever we recorded last podcast because I feel like I feel better.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a different vibe. Anyways, so, yeah, Caddy Corner, we're talking about why we love our iPads. I can't believe we've never done this show.
Yeah, me either.
This is a crazy thing that we've never done. But I think that this will be one of the better shows. So if you're somebody who thinks that they might want to get into the iPad land and the iPad world, or if you're on the fence maybe, we're just going to go normal Caddy Corner style podcast where we share why we like our iPads so much. So if that sounds interesting, stick around, rate and review the show, like, comment, and subscribe. Check out everything that's linked in the description, and we will take it away right now. Caleb, hit it.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, the iPad is the coolest thing. I love it so much. I really do. So the first thing that I have on my list, and this is in no particular order at all, but the first thing is just note-taking. iPads for note-taking is unreal.
The best.
If you get one of the pencils, it's incredible. Apple Notes is decent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I was a user for a long time.
The troubles come whenever you have a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Organization for that is not the greatest.
Yeah.
And so now I use GoodNotes.
Which is the best, I think.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
GoodNotes is incredible. There's also a lot of other good options out there. So do your research whenever it comes to what kind of note-taking app you want to use. But I will say, just in general, note-taking, I couldn't do it any other way than iPad.
Yeah, especially for specifically academic purposes,
Yeah.
like in-class notes. The best thing about using the iPad for your notes is that all you have to do is just bring this with you and
To
nothing
school.
else.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about pens, pencils, paper, anything. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
spill your coffee on your notebook, like your actual notebook, you're toast. You know what I mean?
If you spill your coffee on this notebook, you're toast too.
But not only if you get it in the hole, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a little different. But at least your notes are saved
Right.
in the ether land. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I think is super important about, and another super valuable thing about note taking on your iPad is you can open your notes on any of your devices, at least with GoodNotes, and also with Apple Notes as well, assuming that you use an iPhone and a Mac and stuff. So, but you can do it with GoodNotes too, which for me that makes me go back and actually look at my notes more often.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know about you, but whenever I was taking pen and paper notes, I was never looking at them.
Yeah. And I was the same way whenever I was using Apple Notes. I was never going back to look at them either.
Yeah.
Just because it was so hard to find stuff after I would write it. But, yeah, definitely since I've switched over, I've definitely caught myself going back to my notes many times.
Yeah, but if you're taking physical notes, you're never opening your notebook for the vibes. Do you know what I mean? You're never going to accidentally, do you know what I mean, end up back inside of GoodNotes looking at your stuff.
Right.
But you're definitely not going to do that if you're looking if you're not going to just be at your house and accidentally stumble into your math notebook. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
There's just no chance.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier to go back and reference your stuff. But what I think that the iPad is super good at for specifically note taking is in college this is more common where your professors will put the PowerPoints in Blackboard or in Canvas or whatever. Writing on a PowerPoint is the best thing ever, I think.
Yeah.
Highlighting it, being able to take your notes on the slides, that's the best thing in the world for myself personally.
Yeah.
And if I'm in a very lecture-based class, which we've kind of gotten away from, just given where we are in our college experiences, but that is the best way, I think, of taking notes just ever.
Yeah.
Annotating those slideshows. Yeah. And so, but from a student perspective, the iPad is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I basically have written down that it is the best piece of tech you can have as a student for anything except for typing.
Yeah.
It's the best.
It really is.
It really is. And you can Bluetooth keyboard to this thing. You really don't need a laptop for most degree works. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
For most.
Yeah.
And what you do as a student most of the time is note taking, watching videos, looking at presentations and PowerPoints and things of that nature. All of that is, in my opinion, just better to do on an iPad.
Oh, yeah.
So it does all the general student stuff the best. You can, editing a PDF on a computer, it sucks. Do you know what I mean? There's not a good way to do that, really. No matter how good your PDF editor is. It's not as easy as just writing on it, right? And viewing presentations, I think, is easier on the iPad as well. So it's just the best tool for students. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I totally would agree with that. The next thing that I have written down is editing. Not so much editing videos. I would never attempt that on an iPad ever again.
It would be fun though if there is like pro software. Like it would be fun to double back on that and maybe have like a little fun time with that sometime.
Yeah, maybe. But editing photos on an iPad is unbelievable.
It's almost as good as the note-taking experience.
Thank you to Austin Rayfield for even telling me about this at all. Because every photo that I would take, I would throw into Photoshop on my laptop, which was a crazy move.
I know that sucked.
Crazy move.
Yeah.
But I was new to the game.
Yeah.
And then I was introduced to Lightroom, iOS or
iPad OS
or whatever. And it's a game changer for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Game changer.
It's the best.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so much more efficient. It's so much. I feel like you have more control.
Totally.
Especially whenever it comes to colors. Way more control. It's incredible.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, and then also, kind of under the same umbrella, like if you're an artist in another form, like drawing on an iPad screen,
Procreate is unreal.
Is unreal.
Yeah.
And so I would say that if you're an artist or just in the creative field at all, you need one of these bad boys.
Yeah,
you need one.
Completely. And I think for me, what I find myself getting out of like my iPad from a creative perspective the most is it is so good for brainstorming for me.
It's so good.
There are tons of different apps that you can use for it. There's one that comes stock with everybody's Apple devices now called Freeform that I haven't looked super far into, but that is effectively an endless whiteboard app that you can collaborate with, and I think that it's actually probably worth me like looking into, and I've been meaning to. However, I have neglected that, but there's also a lot of other ones like Endless Paper, and even GoodNotes is good as well, just to be able to get all of like your information out of your head as a creator is super important, and being able to do it on your iPad, I value a ton because, like I said, with the general student taking note stuff, referencing your ideas back is the most important part, and for me, physically, I'm kind of 50-50 with that, but also they're forever archived. You don't have to worry about losing them. You don't have to worry about them getting eaten by your dog. Nothing weird's going to go on, hopefully. So at least less likely in my experience.
Yeah, 100%. The next thing that I think that just Apple as a company does so well, and we've talked about this 100 times, but it's just the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Everything that you can do on an iPad makes sense. It makes sense that I can set this beside my laptop and use it as a monitor with like the sidecar mode.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
It's unreal, right?
It also makes sense that this thing comes with or you can buy a pencil and you can write on this like it's a sheet of paper. That makes sense to me. It makes sense that every like app that I can use on here or on my phone, I can also use on here and like have a better experience. That makes sense to me.
Right.
And I think that is just something that Apple does so well with all of their devices, but especially with this guy, because like I said before, it's the most versatile piece of technology you can use. I mean, if this is all you had, you could make do.
Completely.
100%. I think that for me in my workflow, this is definitely like a secondary tool, 100%, because this guy right here is my go-to.
It's a different, world.
I use it way more than I use my iPad.
Right.
But then I wouldn't even say way more. I would just say that I use it for
different things.
Yeah, different things.
Yeah.
But I mean, if this was all you had, then it just makes sense. It makes sense that everything that you needed to do, you could do on this guy. It makes sense because this is a tablet and it's made to be portable. It's made so that you don't have to carry this thing around everywhere, or like you don't have to bring your desktop computer everywhere.
Right.
It
takes up a lot less footprint too.
Yeah, you don't want to like do work on your phone.
Right.
That's why you have this.
Right.
Like that just makes sense to me.
Totally. And that leads me into another point that I have too, which is like the form factor that this thing occupies for what you get out of it is unreal, in my opinion. I am somebody who travels frequently enough to where this has been a godsend.
Yeah.
I spend time on planes. I spend time in the back of cars, just like loading basically until I get to my final destination. You know what I'm saying? And this is the best for that because you download your Netflix and then you have like an actual screen. And it's like you can do that on your computer too, but are you really going to be the guy on the plane who's whipping out the computer? You know what I mean? It's a bold strategy.
Yeah.
But this kind of gives you that same kind of utility in tons of other ways. And that even an example from like something that we did recently, whenever we shot all of those interviews for the documentary, right? I'm standing in the back of like behind the scenes holding my iPad, taking the notes. Imagine doing that with your laptop. You have to have like some kind of a standy guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the situations that you can use your iPad in, there are situations you can use your iPad in that are just way more convenient and kind of keep your quality of life intact in comparison to using a laptop in some cases. There are obviously flip sides of that too. But there's a lot of things. Like I saw this guy that was he was a like a hobbyist pilot, I guess you'd call it, and he uses an iPad mini as his like computer of choice, like his cockpit computer to like map stuff because it's so small and you're in like a little tiny plane cockpit. But you couldn't do that with a laptop. There's no laptop that's that size. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just the form factor of a tablet, not having to take up whatever kind of space that takes up, because you have the screen vertical, but also the keyboard. Super important to consider as well.
Yeah.
Space.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then that's one of my other points is it's just more portable than a laptop. It's way easier to carry around. It is so much more convenient for me to carry this around campus than like carrying a backpack with like both of them.
Yeah. But let's say just to like double down on that point, let's say that you're going to school no backpack. You just bring it. Oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah,
you know
carrying this around campus
because it's way easier.
It's not even like weird.
Yeah.
It's not uncomfortable to like just carry this around because that's what it's made for. It would be weird if I was just carrying this around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because for what I do whenever I go to class, I'm not really pulling my laptop out ever
unless you're typing.
Exactly. And so that's why every time I need to do anything, then this is what I pull out,
Me too.
So then it's like, why even bring this to school, So that's why I don't really, because it just doesn't make sense to bring it most of the time. And so whenever it comes to that, it just like makes it so much easier. Like my backpack is lighter.
Yes. So important to consider that. That is real, people. It's real.
Yeah.
If you have books and crap, it's a rough life.
Yeah, it really is. It's lighter. It takes up less space. It's so much easier to just like pull out, like you said, and like stand around with it or like sit with it or whatever. It's just so much better to travel with. So much easier to travel with.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the best for that. And similar like to what you said is like what I think that one of the things that iPad is so good at is it's so good for consuming stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So like you watching your YouTube videos, it's so good for that. It's so good at watching all kinds of video content. But like if you're somebody who is scrolling like online, like for myself at least, whenever I'm doing anything in a web browser and I'm like consciously doing it, right? I'm using my iPad. I'm not using my phone and I'm not using my laptop because it just makes more sense. I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can I can send stuff around. It's nice and easy, and it's just the best for those kinds of things. But also just any app where you're consuming content, it's so good for that. Like the app, like your Apple Podcast apps, these apps are designed for iPads. So you get kind of more utility out of them. And that's like such a weird kind of way of thinking about it. But like the way that it's laid out is so much, I feel like, more intuitive.
Yeah.
And it takes advantage of like the big screen and takes advantage of the use case. And I think that it's just super important. Basically anything that you're doing that requires you to scroll and like consume content that way, except for like TikTok, bold strategy.
Yeah.
The iPad's better for it, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. That my next point is like the entertainment world or like side of this thing. It just makes more sense.
Way more sense.
It really does. It makes more sense to use this if you're watching YouTube videos. For me, anytime I'm doing research, I use my iPad, and I think it just makes it easier. Like you said, being able to zoom in, being able to like pick this thing up and like really get in there and like try and figure out what I'm looking at. I can't do that with a laptop or a desktop or whatever.
It's so good for reading information
so
too.
Good.
Like I consume most of my news from my iPad just because everything's bigger. You know what I mean? Not that I
Right.
have like eyeball problems or anything, but it just makes
Yeah.
more sense. You know?
Reddit on the iPad
Yeah.
makes more sense.
I love Pinterest on the iPad.
Pinterest
It's
on the iPad.
unreal. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then back to like what I was telling earlier, like sidecar mode
Yeah.
for iPad or for Mac, it makes sense, like because this in my brain is not a primary like device.
No, it's
it's
a
a
sidearm.
it's a secondary device,
Mhm.
and so like if you are somebody who takes up space in the Apple world like I do and like you do, then iPads make so much sense because of the way that all of the devices can work together. Because like a computer and an iPad can work together simultaneously, and like it's easy to do.
Totally.
And I think that is that would be a selling point for some people. Because if you're a dude who doesn't mind bringing your laptop around everywhere you go, like if you travel and at your desk, you're running double monitors, but you're not bringing your double monitors places.
Bold strategy.
But you have your laptop and your iPad that you don't mind traveling with all the time.
Right.
Boom.
You have a workable double monitor setup in a pinch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you need that,
Right.
and I think that is like a game changer.
Totally. It totally is. The reason that I think that this episode is super interesting, not only because the subject matter is interesting, but dude, 3 years ago we were complete haters.
Yeah.
3 years ago we were full timing an iPad in high school, and it was the worst.
It was.
It was the worst. And I don't really know what has changed. I don't really know what's changed, but what I like to think has changed is that whenever we were using iPads in high school, it felt like a big iPhone. It didn't feel like the OS had developed. Do you know what I mean? It didn't feel like that there were apps that I cared about to use. Do you know what I mean? But now it feels the complete opposite, I think. Like it feels unreal. It feels like the power of this thing is almost like limitless. And I feel like that was 3 years ago or 4 years ago or however that math works.
Yeah.
It's super interesting to think about it that way, I think. It's crazy to think about it that way, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think maybe it goes back to like we were full time in iPads then.
Maybe, and that maybe plays a part.
Yeah,
Totally.
Because like whenever I was doing research for this podcast, I was like going on Reddit and like there's a subreddit that's like people who are on the fence about buying iPads. Why'd you get them?
Sure.
And I was just reading, and then there was a dude. He was like, I was using an iPad full time, and he was like, because I thought that like I'd be cool with that. And then he was like, I ended up having to get a laptop because like you just run into roadblocks. And I think that does happen.
Completely.
Especially like depending on your workflow or whatever. Because there are some things that this can't do.
Right. And maybe it's worth listing those too for the audience. So like pro video editing, it does exist now. You can use Final Cut now. You can use DaVinci Resolve. The Premiere one I think is really bad, but I don't know.
Premiere one's garbage.
Yeah. But they do exist now, but like they're not. They do have desktop caliber chips now in iPad, so it's worth considering. We don't do any of that as a collective. We don't do any video editing on the iPad at pro levels. What else is an iPad bad at? Photography.
yeah, the camera's not great.
Yeah, camera's not great. It's kind of weird to take FaceTimes from because the camera's in the wrong spot.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say that like video calls are a no-go on like iPad. So if you do like a lot of Zoom calls, I would say probably stay away from the iPad.
Yeah, at least as your primary.
Yeah, whenever it comes to that.
I'm trying to honestly think about what else it's like not good at that we have like experienced. I mean, I can't think of anything else.
Typing.
Yeah, typing. And whenever we like if you're doing an email, that's cool for me.
Yeah.
But if it's anything more than like a page, and a page would be brutal.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe like 2 paragraphs max kind of situation, depending on how long you write your paragraphs. But yeah, typing not great. But probably as good as it's getting. But with that being said, there's keyboard cases.
Right.
You can Bluetooth your keyboards to it if you want to do that. So there are kind of workarounds, for that. But I wish that I could think of more things that it was bad at off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know.
I really do wish I could.
Yeah, I should have thought about that. I should have came with something, but I didn't even.
But I can't think. What were we doing in high school that we didn't like it for? Was it just videos?
It was videos for me. That was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, there are some downsides. I don't want it to just make it seem like the iPad is like some gift from the gods. Do you know what I mean? Like there is a bad side to it, and like do your research for whatever it is that you're working on.
Yeah.
If you're like, if it's not, you can't 3D model on an iPad. You can't in the same way that you can on like a proper computer. So that's important to consider as well. And so just do your research on your workflow, and then the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to look at like other professionals in that field and like what are they using, and then understand why.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's hard. For us, it's really easy because we like to make videos, and there's an entire platform of people who also like to make videos that we spend a lot of time in, so it's pretty easy for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
I think so too.
Boom. Caddy Corner episode 83, why we love our iPads. I mean, what a good one. What a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Caddy Corner. We talk about knowledge bombs and we drop information every single Friday, audio and video. We also do Caddy Corner After Hours every Wednesday, audio only, where we talk about whatever we want to talk about for as long as we want to talk about it. Go back and check out all of our other shows that we've done. It's worth doing. We've made good stuff, hence why we've done it for 83 weeks, which is pretty crazy. I'm Austin. He's Caleb. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.